Hello and welcome to another British episode of Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Schultz. So, pretend you're a wealthy lord in England in the middle of the 18th century. You go on a grand tour to the continent, and you have such a good time in Italy, Greece, Turkey, Syria, and other exotic places that when you get home, you want to keep the party going. How do you do that? You build yourself a super cool secret underground cave fort for you and your friends. That's how. Light a candle, grab a mug of something boozy, and let's go. Lights out. The village of West Wickham is a town that is protected by the National Trust, so it looks much like it did centuries ago. The George and Dragon pub in town was built in the 16th century, on the site of a coach station dating back to the 14th century. The ghost who haunts the pub is a young lady named Suki. We'll hear her story in a bit. Above the village is the place we'd come to see, the legendary Hellfire Caves. The caves extend about a quarter of a mile underground. There are several chambers: the entrance hall, the steward's chamber, the banqueting hall, Franklin's Cave, named after Sir Francis Dashwood's friend Benjamin Franklin, among others. All of these rooms are connected by long passageways. Crossing an underground river, named appropriately enough the Styx, brings you to the inner temple, the heart of the cave system. This room is directly underneath St. Lawrence's Church, 300 feet above. This isn't some random accident of nature, oh no. This cave system was built on purpose by Sir Francis Dashwood. During the late 1740s, Dashwood had a brilliant idea. He wanted to help the local economy, so he had the men of the area dig out enough chalk from the hillside above West Wickham to make 3 miles of road between West Wickham and High Wickham. Local farm workers had suffered through several failed harvests, so they needed a helping hand. This project not only provided employment for the local workers, it also gave Dashwood the opportunity to build the clubhouse of his dreams. See, Sir Francis had started a couple of clubs in the mid-18th century. The Dilettante Society was set up to encourage interest in classical art. The Divan Club was for those who had visited the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, and other exotic eastern ports of call. Dashwood had recently returned from a grand tour of Europe. He had enjoyed himself thoroughly, visiting Italy, Greece, Syria, and Turkey. When he got home, he decided to start another club, which he called the Knights of St. Francis of Wickham. And this club would have nothing to do with art. Instead, it celebrated the raucous, lecherous, libertine worship of Bacchus and Venus, ancient gods of pure pleasure. When the club started out, the guys met in the ruins of an old Cistercian abbey at Medmenham, 6 miles away from West Wickham. But after a while, the club's activities moved to the caves above West Wickham. Caves designed by Dashwood and created by his workers digging chalk out of the hillside. We were at the George and Dragon pub to meet Cieran O'Keeffe, the former host of Most Haunted, which ran for 14 seasons in the UK. When he showed up, we sat and talked shop for a while, and he told us about the Hellfire Caves and about Suki.
So we're sat in the George and Dragon in West Wickham, in Buckinghamshire, And we are actually in a protected village, which you may not have realised. So West Wickham itself is a National Trust protected village, so no building work or anything is allowed to be done without the National Trust approving it. So you've got kind of a very old looking village. And several hundred years ago you had Suki, who was a barmaid here in the George and Dragon, and she succumbed to the advances of one of the patrons here. Basically they fell in love, but it wasn't an accepted partnership from their respective families, but certainly from the gentleman that came to the George and Dragon, certainly not from his family's perspective. So they decided to elope and get married, and their idea was that they would meet up at the caves. And the story goes that some of the other patrons who quite fancied Suki heard this, and they thought, we're going to play a little bit of a prank on Suki, and they went up to the caves in advance of that reunion or that meeting, and they hid behind a particular rock, and then when she approached they threw rocks out, which is a weird prank, but anyway, they threw rocks out, and apparently the rock either hit her and she fell, or she fell to avoid the rocks, but she fell and she died. And then there's an embellishment of that story which some people tell, which is that gentleman then turned up at the caves and didn't see her, couldn't find her, and just assumed that he'd been left at the altar. So there's that embellishment. I'm telling you that because Suki, of course, was based at the George and Dragon, and Suki is said to haunt the West Wickham Caves, or the Hellfire Caves as they're known. So that's kind of the main ghost that everybody talks about. You can sense a little bit of a storytelling development that's happened with that story, but I always love it because it's got a lovely connection with the caves and the George and Dragon, which existed at the time. We're talking about the caves, and they are referred to as West Wickham Caves or Hellfire Caves because of the Hellfire Club. So again, there is this story that the Dashwoods, who own a big manor that's kind of behind us in that direction, several hundred years ago had a club that was a debauched, hell-raising club for men, and that they would meet in secret, drink, they would have women of the night visit, there was supposedly rituals that happened as part of that, but it all happened down in the basement part of the Hellfire Caves where we're going to go and visit. Now, that's part of the story, and there's an element of truth to that, which is that the club actually existed. 100%. We know that for a fact. There's always been this association, and some individuals who shall remain nameless, Zach, claim that it's satanic, and there's this whole satanic part to it. That's a complete fabrication. You know, when people talk about the Hellfire Club, it's called Hellfire. Immediately you think, oh, is there something satanic? No. Raising hell is what they were doing, as in they were partying when they shouldn't have been, because this group was made up of the gentry, so Dashwoods, but also you had politicians, people that were quite reputable and influential, you know, in the upper class, and so it was very much a secret organisation. Disraeli even as well.
Oh.
You know, Disraeli got involved in the club at some point. So we know that the club actually existed. We know that there were potentially a handful of occasions when the club met in the caves. The rest of the time they actually met in a disused church. But yes, the claim is from the caves, and I won't say it when we're there, that the Hellfire Club met regularly there all the time, when in fact it's probably a handful of times, if that. But the nice thing about the caves is that there is the legend that they are connected somehow to the manor. So when we go into the caves, we won't be able to find the route, but somehow they're connected. But also the very, very bottom of the caves, where they reputedly held their sordid activities, directly above is the mausoleum, which is on the top of the hill. Mausoleum, which is on top of the hill, And there's some story which I can't remember, which we'll look up when we get there, which is about the heart of one of the gentlemen in the club being held in a vase in the mausoleum directly above them.
Another body part.
So there you go.
Another body part.
Another body part, yes. It's been stolen now. It's been stolen. It's no longer there, but it's been stolen now. But yes, there you go. That's the Hellfire Caves. So we'll take a leisurely stroll up there and have a look.
After hearing the stories, we left the pub and went for a walk in the sunshine up to the entrance to the Hellfire Caves. This looked absolutely nothing like the entrance to any cave I'd ever seen. The inside of the caves were also completely unexpected. The tunnels were nice and cool, and every single person we passed on our way in and on our way out was a senior citizen. You wouldn't think that a place called the Hellfire Caves would hold that much appeal for that particular demographic. Maybe they were just there for the natural air conditioning. There was classical music piped into the banquet room, which made it a little difficult to hear what Cieran was saying in that room. But the tour was fascinating nonetheless. Have a listen.
Those are the two main ghosts, of course. Over the years, there have been reports of activity. So even though these are the ghosts, this is more apparitions. But there's the activity that people report, stone throwing being a key one, but also the touching sensation. So years before I met my wife, and even knew who she was, she ran a paranormal night here for a leukemia-based charity to raise money for them, and she always tells the story of her being here and being in the central bit, which I'll point out when we get there, and feeling like something touched her, not her bottom, but touched the back of her legs. And she screamed out, and the girl next to her screamed out, and then it was kind of a chain reaction. Because when the lights are off, you can imagine how dark it really is.
Oh, goodness.
Look, you'll understand what I mean by the gentry of the day kind of hiding the fact that they're involved in debauched activities. Sir Francis Dashwood, of course, but MPs, politicians, but you also had John Wilkes, who was a well-known MP at the time. So yeah, these are names of highly influential people that wanted to disguise the fact that actually all they were doing was partying, really. Sorry to destroy but yeah, that's...
A list from 1762.
Sometimes they put up a big screen and a projector and they have people pay to kind of watch a film. But this is where my wife was on that fateful night. And what they had done was all the sound effects, of course, wouldn't be on, but all the lights were off as well. And they made sure that participants were all stood with their backs against the wall, all around the edge, so that even the entrance and the exit, there was nobody standing there. They had to have a wall behind them. And she was standing there, and that's when she felt something grabbed her leg or touched her leg. She screamed, the girl next to her screamed, they screamed, and then she ran off. And she was in charge of it. And somebody shouted, Anna, get back, you're in charge of it, you can't leave the participants here. But this year, perspective. This is the mausoleum, so directly under the centre of that is the bottom of where we'll get to when we get to that's directly underneath, and then that's the church. Now I'm not sure about this ball here, so this golden ball here, there's a legend that at some point this church became what's the expression, deconsecrated church, and that ball was used by Satanists to spy on potential victims. But the reason why is because if you're at that point But there are 3 roads. There's one road that goes into High Wycombe, one road that goes off to Prince Elizabeth to the north, and one road that comes from London. So there would be 3 main roads, and from there they could spy their potential victim. Your expression. Not convinced. I'm not convinced either. We're laughing about ghost adventures. We're laughing about ghost adventures and Zach. You know Jeff Ballinger?
Oh yes, I've met him.
So Jeff called me and said, look, Cieran, I'm basically the location manager, so he's the person that finds locations for ghost adventures. And we went, oh yes. And he said, we'd like to do a tie-in with the London Olympics. So we'd like the Ghost Adventures crew, back when it was the 3 of them, we'd like the Ghost Adventures crew to come over and do some investigations in the London area and make it kind of part of the Olympics. Great, okay, sounds good. What ideas do you have for London locations? So I gave him all of the London locations, the usual ones. I gave him the ones that he was never going to get into, Tower of London of course, but even other ones, Hampton Court Palace, to entertain such ideas, all the usual. No, and I was going through this and they've been done, it's too obvious, kind of all this. And I said, well, Jeff, literally, I've given you like 30, 40 locations. You don't like any of them. And he said, no. He said, is there anything unusual? And it wouldn't have to necessarily be in the centre of London. And I said, well, it depends how far out you want to go. And I said, I'm calling you from High Wycombe, where I'm based, just up the road are the West Wickham Caves. Hellfire Caves. Oh, Hellfire Caves, that sounds interesting. So I explained to him a little bit about the history. Long story short, they come over here for a shoot. Jeff says, Cieran, we can't pay you for your expertise because I've given them loads of other locations and some of the history, but we can give you a little bit of money if you appear on the Hellfire Caves episode and just maybe kind of introduce your background. I said, yeah, no problem. So I came here, they set up a camera kind of pointed that way, and Zach was standing on the wall and I was standing off to the side of the wall. And Zach said, right, before we start filming, this is what I'm going to ask you. So I'm going to ask you, what is your association with Hellfire Caves? Because I was a boy here. One of the first ever ghost hunts that I did in my very early teens was on the hill leading up to the mausoleum. So there's an association there, but now I work at the university local to here. And he said, the next question I'm going to ask you is about parapsychology. What does it mean? You're sceptical, but does that mean you're cynical? How would you approach an investigation? Could you talk us through some of the ghosts? That sort of thing. And he said, and the last thing is, he said, I know from speaking to Jeff that you're a demonologist. And I said, well, only in the sense that I bought a demonology qualification just to prove that you can. I said, so I'm not really, but I said, I'm fascinated by the concept of demons. He said, okay, so we might ask you something about that. He said, are you happy with all of those questions? I said, yeah, not a problem. He said, okay, are we ready? Switch the camera on, sound, all of this. Dr. Cieran O'Keeffe, are there demons here? That was his first question. Forget all the rest of it. Are there demons here? If you watch the episode, you'll see me go, yes. If you think there are, then there are. That was my response. I was just like, oh God, it's one of these.
What's the other thing they touch turns into now? When they first start out, it was ordinary ghosts.
Had to be demons, possessions.
Zach's walking around like this, like he's possessed. He's getting scratched and all that. And that's what it turned out from that right up to present.
It was like.
Sorry, I was giving a commentary.
That's all right. Well, delighted to hear
It's
it.
going overnight. You see a ghost. So it says. Paranormal.
That's very strong.
That's the fellow from Most Haunted. This is his flat.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you?
Did you ever watch Most Haunted? You
I
probably
haven't
didn't.
seen it myself. No.
Yeah.
Have you stayed here overnight?
Oh yeah, stayed here overnight many times.
Really?
Even when I was 16 years old, so we're talking 40 years ago, as a boy living in High Wycombe, I came here and I did a little bit of a ghost hunt on the hill and then the mausoleum. And I came to the caves and I said, oh, I'd like to do a ghost hunt here. And they said, how much will it cost us? So they were prepared to pay me. And I said, well, you don't need to pay me, just the direct, and they locked me in here. So I stayed overnight here when I was 16 years old.
And what happened? Did things happen?
I fell asleep. And I got a bit cold.
It is a bit cold,
but I've been
isn't it?
back again since 3 or 4 times. And there have been a couple of times where we've heard what sounded like, if you take one of these little stones, they're a very distinctive sound. If you hear that, yeah, without this sound effect, did you hear that? So stayed here a couple of times, and that's what we heard. That sort of sound, almost as though there's somebody somewhere throwing the stones and making that sort of sound.
Oh.
So yeah, and my wife got her bottom touched as well when she was here. She was very pleased about that.
I don't think that's a very ghostly thing, is
Not
it?
a very ghostly thing, no.
Except for the fact that she was standing against the wall.
Yes, she was standing against the wall.
Very interesting. Yes, we just read that. Yeah. I've seen it.
Enjoy. Hope you get out all right.
We just keep going.
Oh, you haven't been down to the bottom yet, have you?
Oh, I think so. Well, we've been round the... We haven't been down here. Yeah.
Oh, you haven't been down. Derek.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's a shame.
Yeah. It is a shame because it'd be nice to go.
You should be on there.
Yvette and Derek, because
Well,
Derek's
take a picture of him.
Derek's now passed
Take a picture of him
away.
right there.
Derek's now passed away, so he's not going to come back unless it's in spirit. But Yvette will come back here. But I'm back here all the time. All the time.
Don't like you're presenting again. There you go. There's it.
Thank you.
Yes, because we saw your jacket in the Haunted Museum in Nottingham. They've got your most
Oh,
haunted
my
jacket.
most haunted jacket.
Yeah, it's a relic now. It's in the
Funny that's in the
it's in the
museum.
gift it's in the gift shop. They're not selling it, but it's there.
That's a black jacket. isn't
That's it, yeah.
The black one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you're allowed to take pictures of.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Yes, they bought it.
Dr. Bodkin Adams' medical case and your jacket.
Right, watch your head. It gets to this point, a number of people reported dizziness. Kind of a dizziness or a head kind of suppression feeling, kind of feeling a bit heavier, but also dizziness as well. Discounting for the possibility that, it's a bit of a walk, but it's not a taxing walk, it's just a walk, so it's interesting. River Styx?
River Styx.
It's the River Styx, S-T-Y-X.
Yeah,
Lovely. Did they make the stalactite?
I mean, I just sort of think Styx is something to do with the devil, is it not?
Not particularly the devil. It's in Greek mythology. It's the river the dead had to cross.
Oh, right. That's well, I knew
And they had
the
coins
name.
on their eyes to pay the ferryman. Yeah. Or they might reach the ceiling someday. Did the workers build the stalactites and stalagmites as well? Or have they been formed?
Some of them are real, but then there's a bit of mock-up going on. So this is...
So what do you think Lord Dashwood and all his friends would have thought about this place being turned into a tourist trap?
I don't know, but the interesting thing is the Dashwood still exist.
Ah.
So the Dashwood line, the family line, still exists. So actually, in the manor there, you've still got Sir Francis Dashwood.
Oh my.
But it's kind of all of those lines later, and he's quite happy to trot himself out on various TV shows. He's even interviewed in Ghost Adventures and talk about the Dashwood Manor, but he talks about it, in a hearty English gentry way, of kind of dismissing the idea of we're not Satanists, we're just having a good time.
Well, yeah.
As we go back, you might have noticed as we came down, I was taking all the right options. We're going to go back so that as we go back, we're going to take all the right so that we go back a slightly different way.
Why is it called the Children's Cave?
The Children's Cave.
Yeah.
I think there's some forms of actually who work in there.
Oh.
I don't know if there's any substance to that.
Oh,
It
okay.
implies that there was slave labour, but actually it was more a case of, again, with children, how they're going to get money, and potentially they're going to help out with this and they'll get some lovely pocket money.
I see.
I mean, you shouldn't put children in this sort of environment, but at the time, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, rather than it being slave labour, it was, do you want to earn some extra pocket money, and then give them a menial task. Hello. The evil scientist part of me, which is what I love about the psychology of this, is being on public ghost hunts. And I rarely, if ever, run a public ghost hunt, but participating as in being there as an observer, kind of helping. What I love is witnessing the psychology of anxiety associated with this place, and that imagine the place without any lighting, without any narration. So you're doing this entire walk and you get to the very, very bottom. It's the anxiety of the escape route. It's that thought of what if something happens and I need to get out. And you can almost hear it happening in people's brains, this anxiety as they get to that very bottom. And they go, well, that was a long way to get down there. And now I have to get all the way back in the pitch dark. You can feel the anxiety, which is therefore no surprise that some people have experiences when you get to the very bottom. And also no surprise that you might also sometimes get that dizziness and a shortness of breath and people getting lost.
I do hope you've enjoyed this visit with a British para-celebrity. It was a real treat to meet Cieran, especially as he didn't act like a celebrity. I've never met Zach Bagans, but if I did, I'm sure he wouldn't be as pleasant and personable as Cieran O'Keeffe. Join me next time as we travel north to Edinburgh. Get ready to meet some Scottish ghosts the next time we go lights out.